Hi, and welcome to Mrs. PM Reads. Today we are continuing in our story, Shoeless Joe by W.P. Kinsella. And I just looked, my goodness, this is part 4, I believe section 3, but it will be in the description. I'm close to the camera. Sorry, I'm bumping the table. Anyway, in the last video, they were still at the Minnesota Twins ballpark, wreaking havoc and having fun. And then at the end of that video, they were in a car and Ray was recalling a conversation with Eddie Sissons about his funeral and how he wanted to be dressed. All right, so we are going to continue there. This is home. That's right. They were headed back to Ray's house. This is home, I say, as the car glides down Dubuque Street in Iowa City, past City Park and along the Iowa River. Green and peaceful as Chinese silk, where it snakes behind grassy banks with university buildings on either side. Salinger and Moonlight Graham are busy rubbernecking tourists as we drive towards the center of town. Iowa City, immortalized by Meredith Willson as River City in The Music Man. Shady streets, very old white frame houses, porch swings, lilacs, one-pump gas stations, and good neighbors. But the wagons have been gathered into a circle, and the pioneers are being picked off one by fast food franchises that spring up everywhere like evil mushrooms, but by concrete and glass buildings, muffler shops, and Howard Johnson's motels. Each of these destroys a little more history. Iowa City is a town of grandfathers fighting a losing battle against time. We have a drugstore with a soda fountain, I say. It's dark and cool, and you can smell malt in the air like musky perfume. And they have cold lemon cokes in sweating glasses, a lime drink called Green River, and just the best chocolate malts in America. It's called Pearson's, right out of a Norman Rockwell painting. I'll take you there tomorrow. I think about the message I received at Metropolitan Stadium in Bloomington while we cavorted like mythical creatures on the damp grass. It was even less precise than the previous ones. What I saw was Eddie Sissons seated across a table from me, the brass serpent head of his cane hidden under his large hands. With the ambiguousness of a true oracle, the voice spoke of sharing and betrayal in a way that I knew meant Eddie Sissons. I eased the car across Town Park in the lot next to the Bishop Krigg Friendship Center, located in a renovated Victorian house. Tall honeysuckle, each stalk measled with scarlet berries, closed the front of the building, thickening the air. As I open the door into the common room, I see Eddie Sissons, the oldest living Chicago Cub, sitting in a square green easy chair. His back is to me, but the mane of white hair easily identifies him. Kid Sissons, I say, stepping around his chair in order to face him. I stick out my hand. He half stands, but his creaking joints won't let him make it all the way. Been expecting you, he says. At least I think I have. He goes on, a puzzled expression drifting across his face. I dreamed about you last night, and I said to myself, I bet Ray's gonna come see me today. He settles back into the chair, but instead of looking at me, he looks at the floor. Whatever you want to say to me, get on with it, he says to the faded carpet that was once the color of a green apple. It's nothing bad, I say. You must be remembering your dream. I want you to come out to the farm with me. I have something to show you, something I should have shown you long time ago. I find myself pacing back and forth. He looks up at me, his eyes the faded blue of dried bachelor's buttons. He stares over his hands, which are cupped over the serpent head cane. Did you just come in from the farm? He says finally. I've been away, I replied, for a couple of weeks. I have people I want you to meet. Have you ever heard of J.D. Salinger, the writer? And a baseball player. He played in the majors. No, that's not quite right. Anyway, I want you to meet him. Eddie fidgets in the chair. His head is down. He mumbles something about someone named Judy, who I assume is a supervisor at the center. Come on, I insist. You don't have to check with anybody here, and you live alone. I reach down and take his arm and help him to stand. We move a step or two towards the door. You're not going to hurt me, are you? Says Eddie. Eddie, for heaven's sakes, it's me, Ray Kinsella. I'm taking you out to your old farm. And I wonder how much Eddie's mind has deteriorated since I last saw him. Once Eddie has walked a few steps, it becomes easier for him to move, and we make it down the front steps and over to the car without incident. Eddie all the time looking around as if he expects to be attacked from ambush. Salinger moves into the back seat beside Moonlight Graham and his dolorous duffel bag, and with much difficulty, like storing an open folding chair, we get Eddie into the passenger seat. I burble like a meadowlark at everything I see. I am happier than I have been since I left Iowa. A quick drive through town, a stop at First National Bank to see if we are still solvent, a stop at New Pioneer Co-op for groceries, and then we head east to the farm. I can feel Annie's warmth pulling me. Smell the sweetness of her, pure as a spring rain. Annie is an Iowa girl raised on a farm. I've only seen pictures of her father, a man I'm almost glad I never met. Not that we wouldn't have liked each other, it's just that I'm uncomfortable with most men, especially men's men, who know all about gears and rifles and how to splice a rope. They always make me feel like the new kid on the block, tolerated but not accepted, and they always act as though they have a common secret that I will never be party to. A picture of Annie's father still sits on the darkly severe mantle in my mother-in-law's home. A freckle-faced man with home-cut hair and a sunburned neck. He stares frankly at the world with Annie's green eyes. And when Annie was 9, he found his way into the whirling gears of a John Deere harvester. Annie's mother relishes telling the story of how it took the other members of the threshing crew over 4 hours to recover all the parts of him from the clanking machine. I think I would have liked him, and more important, that he would have liked me. He went to church just to keep peace in the family, Annie has told me, and he chewed snuff and was known to drop in at Donnelly's bar in Iowa City for an occasional beer. Annie must have inherited her loving nature from him. And she says she remembers him once attending a baseball game when he was in Kansas City for a Great Plains Corn Growers Convention. The kind of people I absolutely cannot tolerate are those like Annie's mother, oops, who never let you forget they are religious. Oh, It seems to me that a truly religious person would let his life be example enough, would not let his religion interfere with being a human being, and would not be so insecure as to have to fawn publicly before his gods. Little g here. My mother-in-law can and does work the Lord into every conversation, whether it concerns coffee prices, Karen's cat, or the weather. The understatement of the year would be to say, we do not like each other. When I appear at her door to apply for the room she had advertised for rent in the Daily Iowan, the first question she asked me was, "Are you a Christian?" For the remainder of the interview, she was cold and distant, the sharp light from a circular trilight glittering off the rims of her glasses. Housing was very scarce. I left my phone number, but held out little hope. But it was early October. Her Christian roomer had been cut by the football team and had left for Georgia after kicking a hole in his door and writing misspelled four-letter words on the wall with a crayon. I was living in a basement room where water drops the size of thumbtacks condensed on the walls, where the bed sheets were always cold and wet, and where large black water bugs clacked across the linoleum all night, every night. It turned out that she needed the money, even if it came from a non-Christian wallet, and I needed a dry place to sleep. As we drove toward the farm, I think of Annie and me walking with our arms around each other's waists towards the ball field in the evening when the clouds are a dozen shades of pink, rose, and chocolate, looking as though they have been stirred in a blender. Annie is a spectator, not a fan, like a reader who reads a whole book without caring who wrote it. She watches, enjoys, forgets, and doesn't read the box scores and standings in the morning paper. I have had good reason not to tell Eddie Skizzins about the baseball field I've built. These past few green and gold summers, I have kept it a secret. We have Eddie out to the farm for dinner every couple of months, and I drop in at the Friendship Center to listen to him talk about baseball. But when he comes to the farm, I park at the side of the house where my enterprise is not visible, and Eddie's arthritis keeps him from exploring the farm himself. When Annie suggests that Eddie would enjoy seeing the field, I choose not to answer her. A guy from First National phoned me today, Eddie said to me during my last visit to the Friendship Center before I set out for New Hampshire. "Oh," I said, "says you're spending $4,000 for a new mini tractor. Wanted to know if you were keeping your mortgage payments up to date." "Oh," I said again. "I said you were. What bankers don't know doesn't hurt them. But what do you need with one of them little tractors?" There was no way that I could explain to Eddie, at least so he would understand. I bought the tractor, an International Cub Cadet, so I could mow the outfield grass. It was taking me a full day to mow the ballpark with my rattletrap gas mower that had to be refueled every few circuits of the field and stalled over and over if the grass was wet or more than an inch long. But Eddie knew enough about corn farming to know that there was no reason for me to own such a machine. And the mortgage payments were indeed in arrears, and the situation would get worse before it got better. I rationalized that it was not as if Eddie needed the money, and I fidgeted and gave evasive answers until he stopped asking, but I knew he was angry with me. We drive east toward Annie, my farm, my miracle, and I have no idea what is going to happen when we get there. I might as well be the Wizard of Oz, Oscar Zoroaster Phaedrig. Isaac Norman Henkel Emmanuel Ambrose Diggs, heading for a Kansas farm in company of a scarecrow, a tin man, and a cowardly lion, with one eye cocked, lest the wicked witch come swooping by, riding a broom and clutching a screaming black cat to her bosom. I feel just a touch of depression, as if a hand were passed in front of my eyes, as I turn the Datsun into the long driveway and with a rumble cross the metal cattle guard that keeps livestock from escaping to the roadway. Everything seems smaller than I remember. The house is neither so stately as I have described it to Jerry and Moonlight, nor as grand as I remember it. A granary lists awkwardly, weathered, gray as dust. The ballpark looks ragged and forlorn. But as I ease the car to a stop, a few of Annie's white Wyandotte hens strolling out of the way, staring at the car with bland orange eyes. Karen bolts from the back door, a blur of white blouse and pink pedal pushers. She flings herself into my arms as I step from the car and hugs my neck in unrestrained joy, smelling sweet as red clover. Daddy, Daddy, it's really you. I can tell, she shouts. An unusual greeting, it seems to me. I have a surprise. I have a surprise, she shouts, kissing me madly on one cheek and then the other. She pulls back to look at me, and her eyes widen as she spots the scar on my left eyebrow, pale pink as a worm. It is really you, isn't it? Her green eyes are troubled. Of course, you silly. I hug her to me, kissing her soft cheeks while she wiggles like a cat, being dressed in doll's clothes. Salinger has squeezed out from behind the driver's seat, walked around the car, and is slowly easing Eddie out of the passenger seat, while one of Moonlight's long, dark arms pushes Eddie on the back. I walk around the car, still holding Karen. This is Jerry Salinger, I say. You remember Mr. Skizzins. And the fellow in the back is Archie Graham. Salinger makes polite noises. Karen scarcely glances at any of them. And we're going to stop right there. So I think that means we have to wait until the next video to find out what her surprise is. All right, you guys. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time. Bye. Ooh. Bye.